This episode of Places She Shapes is sponsored by JAC Project Management. What happens when the fight to be heard at work turns into a mission to change an entire industry? Today's guest, Faye Allen, has spent more than 3 decades in construction, starting as an apprentice surveyor, facing page 3 calendars on site walls, harassment in the office, and constant doubts about whether she'd make it. She fought back, demanded equal pay, and walked away when she didn't get it. That resilience took her from commercial manager roles on multi-million-pound projects to becoming a regional director at Rimkus. Today, she's a chartered quantity surveyor, a FRICS-accredited expert witness, and regularly gives evidence in high-value disputes in the technology and construction court. She's also the author of Building Women, a book born from her own experiences and 4 years of research, calling for systemic change across the industry. In this conversation, Faye reflects on the sliding door moments that shaped her, the battles she's fought, and why she's determined to make construction a safer, more respectful place for the next generation. This is Faye's story, and it's a powerful call for change.
Okay, let's take it from the top.
Faye, welcome to Places She Shapes at Abbey Road Studios. Thank you so much for being here. You're Regional Director at Rimkus. Can you tell me a little bit about what that role involves?
So we're a consultancy and we offer expert services when people are in dispute in construction. We do live project work, so we've got expert services that do quantum sort of dispute work, which I do, delay, technical. We've got project management, QSs that will work on live projects. And basically we're trying to offer a holistic offering when people are working in construction and the built environment.
Fabulous. So can you tell me a little bit about you as a little girl? What were you like at school?
Naughty. I used to run around school pretending to be, and I don't know if you ever remember it, there was like the famous 3, it was like the Amazing 3 or something. So it was Iceman, Firestar and Spider-Man, I think. And I used to run around school pretending that I was Firestar. And it was because I was bored, basically. And they had a specialist person come in and test me. And I came out with really low scores. And my grandfather was like, that's just impossible. She's not stupid. So they sent me for private tests. And I just remember the doctor said to me afterwards, why didn't you do the tests properly, Faye? And I was like, because I didn't like the doctor and I didn't like my teacher. So after that, the school realised it was actually because I was really bored. And I was at a Roman Catholic school. So there was a really lovely sister called Sister Teresa, and she started playing the piano with me at lunchtime and break time and putting poetry that I'd made to music. And that sort of improved my behaviour, basically. And all of a sudden, I started concentrating better.
So it sort of gave you a channel for your
rather
energy.
than running around the corridors pretending I was a superhero.
And do you have lots of friends?
What, when I was young? No, I was bullied quite badly through primary and secondary school, so I was a bit of a loner. I think some of it was probably, I remember my mum took me to the doctor once and he thought I was quite mature for my age, and it was probably because of some of the things that I was dealing with in my childhood. So my mum was epileptic, so I grew up with a bottle of brown smelling salts often close to hand so that if she had a fit I could bring her round again. And if it happened at home, I'd often sort of get her into recovery, and then I'd go next door and get one of my neighbours and they'd come in and help me get her comfortable. And then if my little brother was around, because I had 2 younger brothers, but it was John first, make sure he was okay. And then with the old phone, where it used to take ages to actually do it, phone my dad at work, just say that she'd had a fit and stuff. So it was an interesting childhood, but I think it made me grow up quite quickly, which meant kids my own age didn't really get on with me. So there were sort of 3 of us who had difficult childhoods. I had a friend, Alison, whose brother had Fragile X, so we used to do his physio, and another friend called Jennifer, whose sister had cystic fibrosis, so we used to do her physio. So I think the 3 of us, we weren't like close, but we all had a similar sort of childhood because we all had issues, and we were all very mature for our age. So
So you're almost a carer.
I only got told that recently. It never really felt like that. It was just what was normal for me as a kid.
Yeah.
But someone did say to me recently, funnily enough, nowadays they would consider that a carer. But it was It wasn't all the time, and I just remember we had a local baker's who used to think my dad beat my mum up, and it was only when she had a fit outside the bakery that they realised actually we were telling the truth and that my mum was epileptic.
Because she had bruises and injuries.
Yeah.
Must have been really scary as a little girl.
I think I was just used to it. It never used to scare me. It used to scare other people. I remember if people saw it, because sometimes she might foam at the mouth and stuff, so it was, I suppose, freaky for other people. But for me, it was just normal life. That's just what Mummy did. Get her ready. She'd sleep afterwards because she'd be really knackered because it's quite hard on the body when you fit. And then she'd be all right again. And it's just, that was just normal for me.
Yeah. So school was quite tough then?
Yeah. And I think it was, it was tough really. And they sent me to a different secondary school when none of the people from primary school went, and I still got bullied. So I think that sort of, there was definitely, I'm a bit quirky maybe, and obviously I'd had different upbringing to a lot of people, so yeah.
And what did your dad do?
So my dad's an estimator, so he works in construction, so he's the reason I got into it. I blame him all the time.
It's your dad's fault.
Yeah.
So that's what drew you to the world of construction?
Not originally. Originally I didn't want to do it because, I mean, I had all sorts of memories from, he started his own business from the kitchen table basically. But I used to go to a yard with him when we were little where he used to work for a contractor, so I sort of got used to being around building sites. We'd often be driving as a family on a Sunday to deliver a tender if he was sort of pricing a job. It was only when I was really not sure what I wanted to do, and I didn't finish my A-levels because I was not enjoying them either, and he took me out on a job, and it was like an old Tudor house that Henry VIII supposedly stopped off at, and they were doing this renovation.
Wow.
And it was just really, really interesting, and he was like, fine, let's get you a job then.
Wow. When you were 6 or 7, 8, what did you think you were going to be?
I think I flitted between interior designer and lawyer when I was probably about that age. So I had the sort of the creative side, which obviously Sister Teresa sort of found when I was at primary school. And then I also thought I always wanted to be able to have a house, have a car, sort of, be quite independent. So I suppose I always sort of correlated lawyer with good money.
Okay. So that your dad got your job on site. What happened then?
Well, he didn't take me with him. He actually made me go and get a job with someone else. So, I joined a construction company, and it was 2.5 miles from home, so I used to walk there every day. And I started there as like an apprentice QS, so quantity surveyor. We used to do 4 days a week working, and then they'd send you to college for the other day and later university. So, because I didn't want to do education full time, I wasn't interested in that. So, yeah, it was good. I got removed from the first team I was in fairly quickly because I'm quite sarcastic, and I made a sarky comment when someone said something about playing golf. And I think it was along the lines of, if that's how you get a half day, I'll have to take golf up. At which point he went and complained about me, and I ended up with a really lovely boss who I'm still really dear friends with today, who's been probably one of my best mentors next to my dad through my entire career.
Amazing. And what were those environments like for you as a woman, as a young woman in construction?
It was tough because it was tough in the office and it was tough on site. So in the office, I'd often walk round the team that I sort of got removed from, and I'd hear them saying, oh, she'll never do anything, she'll never get past her degree, like I was not going to ever achieve anything. And then when I was out on site, you had like the guys on site swearing at you, saying you should be chained to the sink, why are you here, and just treating you generally quite badly. And, it was in the day when page 3 calendars were everywhere on the walls in the site offices, and there was always people sort of reading page 3 in the canteen. And, the women that were generally around were either people that worked in the canteen, people that cleaned, or people that were we had a typing pool because that's how long ago it was. I think I was the only woman for so long in my career. It was probably not until I was in my 20s that I went to, I think it was Waits, and I had a lady called Maria Joyce. That was my first sort of female role model.
Did you ever think, oh, I'll do something else, there must be something easier to do?
I did at one point, and because I was really struggling with just the way you get treated. And I remember, and it's something that we sort of say now, it shouldn't matter, but I remember Gary said to me, my boss at the time, go and get a couple of suits and just tell me what the difference is in a couple of months. And it was just such, I just remember I did. I went and got these suits, and just the difference in how I was being treated by dressing a bit more like a bloke. And it sounds so wrong, doesn't it? But that is what I had to do.
A trouser suit?
I had to buy, yeah, literally. And I started wearing shirts with the cufflinks. I went the whole caboodle. And a lot of women my age, when I've interviewed them, have done the same early in their career. And it was like the only way you could get taken seriously was basically to dress like a bloke.
How do you think that's changed today?
I think it's a lot better. I mean, obviously, if you're on site, you're not going to walk around in a sort of skirt and heels or anything, but I don't think there's that much pressure now. You would have to wear trousers, obviously, but it's not the pressure that we had back then, which is good. And I think you're a lot freer to sort of be a bit more natural with your style. But yeah, back then it was the big shoulder pads, you know, wearing the bloke's suit, basically, and acting like a bloke to try and sort of fit in.
So he said, buy yourself a couple of suits, see what happens. What was the change?
I just started being treated with a bit more respect, and it's just, yeah. And I think I started to toughen up as well. I think it got to the point where I was like, if they're going to swear at me and give me shit, basically, then I'm just going to give it back. And that's pretty much what I started to do. And it's why my dad says I have the mouth of a scaffold, because I think it just eventually becomes part of you when you do it so much. But it was the only way, I think, back then that I was actually going to be taken seriously, because I remember someone said to me once, "I'll go and tell that bloke he's got to put his hard hat on," and I was absolutely petrified. And the only way you can do it is actually with a bit of authority. And when I got the chat back, I was just like, don't give me shit, just put your fucking hat on. And that was when I started being taken seriously, because they realised that actually she's not messing around. And I started to be called a Rottweiler then. So it's like I'd gone from sort of being soft and sort of quite, you know, nice, to actually I'd had to really toughen up and get like almost Teflon coating and be a bit of a bitch.
And to be able to do the job that you were being trained and being paid to do.
Yeah.
And did your confidence change as you went through your training?
Yeah, I think it did. And I think also, one of my first sort of bits where I got some confidence is probably I found out one of the guys in the office was earning 10 grand more than me. And it really, really wound me up. And I remember I went into my director's office and I said to him, "Nathan's earning 10 grand more than me. What are you going to do about it?" And he went, "Well, what do you want me to do about it?" And I said, "Well, how about pay us the same? Because we're at the same level, we're doing the same job." And he just went, "That's not going to happen." And I just went in prepared. And I just remember I got my resignation out and I went, well, there's my resignation then. And that was like my first moment of really having that confidence in myself to just go, no, screw you, I'm just going to go somewhere else. So I left for a 15 grand pay rise.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well done. So this was the same company that you'd started with?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so how long had you been there?
I think it was about 4 years.
Okay, so a long time when you're that young. 4 years is a long time.
Yeah.
So you went somewhere else for more money.
Yeah.
What role were you doing at the new company?
So it was slightly different. They were a smaller specialist subcontractor, and it wasn't normal surveying. So it was surveying, but it was very specialist stuff like carbon fibre strengthening. And I was getting a lot of their cash in that they hadn't had for retention. And I realised fairly quickly that it wasn't going to enable me to get chartered with the RICS. So I was like, I'm going to have to go back into a bigger contractor to be able to do that. So I think I was there for 18 months. They were really lovely people, but I just had to think of my career at that point and what I wanted to achieve.
Why was it important to you to be chartered?
I think because you get taken a lot more seriously, it opens more doors for you. And I think part of working hard in that industry as a woman, you almost had to have all of the letters after your name. You had to make sure. So it was like, get the degree, get chartered. It's always been almost you have to work harder because you're a woman in a man's world, unfortunately.
Do you think for the generation that are coming through today that it's important to be chartered?
I still think that, yeah, because I think there are standards that you need to have. And I think particularly now that I'm sort of in the expert world, you definitely do need to have those letters after your name, because if you're giving evidence in court, they don't really tend to take it seriously if you don't have some credibility behind it.
You think it's still more important for a woman to have the letters after her name?
I think it's important for anyone, to be honest, in my particular role. And I always I sort of sponsor and mentor people through their careers. And I've always said to them, I think it's important because I think it's good for you to do continuing professional development as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've transitioned from managing builds to resolving disputes, high stakes, high pressure, I can imagine. What motivated that change?
It was, in all honesty, I was looking for something different because I was tired of doing the same thing and I was finding it really hard. So I went for lunch with someone and he was like, well, why don't you come and work with me if you're having a rough time where you are? And he took me back to the office and I met a few of the people and I was like, oh, OK, yeah, why not? And I just remember the first day I came out of King's Cross Station and I was on the phone to my dad and I was like, Daddy, what have I done? What have I done? I don't know how I'm going to do this, because it was moving from a contracting environment into a consultant environment, which is so polar different. So, you know, being on site in port cabins, gobbing and sort of like shouting at people and, you know, having people shout at you, to going into a consultant's office where it's really quite quiet, not many people swear. It's not as, you know, jokey, although it was eventually with the team. I just felt like a massive fish out of water. I was really, really uncomfortable. And it probably took me 3 months, I reckon, before I started to sort of settle.
And what role were you going in to do? What was the job description?
So I went in as a senior consultant and I was going to start working on quantum dispute work. So basically all the stuff that you do as a surveyor is all around the money and the commercials for building projects. And it's basically, if someone gets into dispute, they'll have an expert on each side and you're basically saying what you think, in your opinion, the dispute is worth. And I remember I got given a report to help with. And when I came back, I was like, well, here you go. And he was like, oh, you've actually finished the report. And I was like, well, yeah, that's what you asked me to do. And he was like, oh, no one's ever done that before. And then that was like, OK, she's a safe pair of hands, off you go. And that's kind of how it started.
Sorry, no one's ever finished a report before?
I think when he'd first given it to someone, I think people often went back with maybe a draft, is this OK? And then another draft, is this... Whereas I just sort of did the whole thing and I was like, is this what you wanted? Which I don't think he was expecting.
OK. So it took you 3 months to sort of settle. What happened after that?
That was when I sort of started to find my feet. So I started working on more claims and disputes in the industry, started getting to know the team better, started meeting lawyers, and obviously you get quite a lot of work off them. And then I started working my way up to my first promotion in that company. So I think it was like a 2-interview process or something, and we had to do a presentation. So for me, it was like, OK, what's my next step? I did expert training with the Academy of Experts. And it was really about how can I just improve myself in this realm now that I've sort of moved, so that I'd be credible.
Yeah. So I imagine you're called upon to give expert evidence in complex cases. What's going through your mind when you're standing in a courtroom being cross-examined?
Do I know my report well enough? Take a breath and listen to the questions so that you actually answer what they're asking, because I think they'll often try and put experts under pressure, and really just taking your time so that you actually answer what they're... Because barristers can be interesting people. Their job on the other side of you is to basically discredit your report or discredit you as an expert. So it's really important that you just hold your composure. Really important that you know your report. There's been one recently where an expert's got in quite a lot of trouble because he didn't know his report. So I always say to people, you know, even if people are helping you, you need to spend that time, make sure that you understand exactly what's happened, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to give the evidence.
Yeah. And how do you keep your composure?
I always remember my dad, just count to 10. That's what goes through my head. Just count to 10.
Count to 10.
In your head, just don't panic, because they try and ruffle your feathers, basically.
Yeah. Do you get nervous?
Yeah, I think you'd be mad if you didn't get nervous, because I think being an expert witness can make or break you, and you hear it in all different sectors, not just construction. So, you know, we have sort of a seminar every year at the Academy of Experts, and they go through all the cases where people have got in trouble to try and make sure other experts don't do the same thing. So there is a lot of pressure, but not that many cases go to court. Many of them will settle beforehand.
So you've got quite a interesting other life. You've just written a book called Building Women.
Yeah.
Can you tell me all about it?
Well, it's been a bit of a labour of love. So it took me 4 years and I did a lot of research for it. And it started really because I think you remember when #MeToo happened, sort of 2017, 18. And I put it on my local Facebook, my sort of home Facebook page, and it kind of blew up in my face because I'd been sexually assaulted at work and I'd never told anybody.
So you put on Facebook?
I just put #MeToo.
Okay.
And that's
nothing else?
No.
Just that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So then I had to, my partner was like, what's going on with you? And I told him, and then I went and got counselling. And it took quite a lot because at the time I'd had too much to drink. So this person was supposedly taking me back to my hotel room to keep me safe. And yeah, that wasn't what happened. So
this was somebody you worked with?
Yeah. And I think that was like the genesis of the idea. It was in my head, like, how many other women has this happened to? And then I was talking at London Build in 2020, talking to other women who were like a lot younger than me, and they were having some of the same issues. And I was like, we're 25 years on, why is this still happening? So I was like, OK, I want to start this book. I knew someone who'd written a book. She was like, oh, speak to Lucy. She's really good. She'll mentor you. And I spoke to her, and they do business books generally. It's Rethink Publishing. They don't really do books like mine. And I sort of told her the idea, had a few emails with her, and she was like, no, I really think you should do this. So, yeah, I embarked on a book group, which helped me sort of plan it.
What was the initial seed? It come from your Me Too hashtag on Facebook. What was the, if you'd had to explain in those very early days what you wanted this book to be about, or what
I wanted it so that I could stop women from being hurt.
Okay, so
that was pretty much what the seed was.
Was kind of the mission.
I'm sick of this happening.
Okay, and this event you were at, where people were telling you, that was just a sort of in general conversation, or were you speaking?
So I was speaking on a panel. So I think there were 5 or 6 women with me, and I was talking to them about their experiences, and then I was realising that if you're a woman of colour, it's even worse than it was for me. If you're a mother, it's worse. If you're a woman of colour with a child, it's worse. So it's like the triple whammy of the issues that women face. And I just thought it gets swept under the carpet all the time. So I got put under a compromise agreement by quite a big contractor years ago because I complained about being harassed. And that's what they do a lot of the time when I was speaking to women. They get put on an NDA or put on a compromise agreement and paid off to go quietly rather than actually dealing with the problem, which is often someone who's been abusive, bullied, harassed or sexually assaulted.
So what happened to you?
It's difficult because I'm not supposed to talk about it.
This episode of Places She Shapes is sponsored by JAC Project Management. JAC have been delivering stunning offices, providing expert advice, honest leadership, and a can-do attitude since 1979. Project management, cost consultancy, and contract administration for office fit-out and relocation projects. JAC creates spaces where people and businesses can thrive. You can find out more at jac-group.co.uk.
A lot of the time when I was speaking to women, they get put on an NDA or put on a compromise agreement and paid off to go quietly rather than actually dealing with the problem, which is often someone who's been abusive, bullied, harassed or sexually assaulted.
So what happened to you?
It's difficult because I'm not supposed to talk about it because they've tied me up in knots over it. But in 2027, when that gag comes off,
come back and tell me all about it. Okay.
But at the moment, I can't really say it. So I wanted to make sure other women weren't going to have the same experience, and the industry did not know how bad things were because it's been swept under the carpet. And
was there any way that you could have not signed those agreements and kept pushing it? Were you in a situation where there was only that way that you could go?
I was at a point where I was so low mentally because of what was happening and the way I was being treated, I could not cope anymore.
Okay.
And after I actually got that agreement, I was off work for, I think it was 4 months, because I really needed time to just try and recover from the way I'd been treated. It was horrendous. They made my life absolute hell. And they knew they were doing it. That's the worst thing. And I remember when I had a bit of a brush with cervical cancer. I was very lucky. They managed to chop it all out. I then got tonsillitis because I was so run down. And the day I walked back into the office after that, I saw the MD and HR walking towards me. And I just had that belly flop. I was like, oh, this is not good. You can just tell, can't you?
Yeah.
And they got me in a room and he just went, your face doesn't fit anymore and we want you gone. And her face was like...
In those words?
Yeah, her face was like, I can't believe he just said that. And I just sort of looked. I was like...
So HR looked at him and went...
And I was like, did he just say that? And I sort of looked at him and I was like, what's going on? I've just like arranged to go to Crawley to see my surveyors. I was like, what is going on? And he went, you just don't fit in here anymore. And then he was like, you know, we'll give you money. And I just remember I sort of like looked at him and I was like, I just couldn't believe it was happening.
There were no issues with your performance or
no, I mean,
your
I've been
work
off
you were
sick
delivering.
for a long time, don't get me wrong, after everything that had happened.
And then you'd put the
literally
complaint...
the day I came back.
But you'd put the complaint in...
Before that, they put me on a performance improvement plan and everything after I did the complaint. They literally make your life hell as a woman.
So they didn't address the complaint at all?
No. Oh, I got told I couldn't do the job. I mean, I can say this bit. A client was hitting on me. I complained about that and I got told, well, if you can't be on your own with the client, then you can't do the job. You know, it's just the whole way I was treated was absolutely disgusting. And the thing is, I think because I was health-wise struggling as well, it's just too much when you've got that going on.
You weren't at your full fighting capacity.
And it just did me completely. So I think mentally I was a lot weaker than I would have been.
When you look back on that now, how do you feel?
I still want to punch him in the face. It's funny because when I wrote the book, in fact, even coming up to writing the book, one of the stories, it did get leaked in construction press. And that person looked me up on LinkedIn and I was like, are you serious? He tried to friend me on LinkedIn. And I literally was like, you really think I'm going to say yes to you being a friend after everything you did to me? So obviously I ignored that, but it really showed me, and it's the same with other people in that business who suddenly, when they knew I was writing a book, started to try and like look at me, because I've got premium on LinkedIn and I have done since I started this process, and you can see who looks at you. You know exactly who's looking at your profile, unless someone's got like a really expensive recruitment company and they can sort of put it's just a person from that company. So having people spy on you to see what you're saying, because I was doing podcasts and I was talking about the book and what the reasons were for the book. So there's a lot of guilt from people that have done things in my career, and it's been quite amusing sort of watching it play out through this process. And I know even recently at one of my old jobs, one of my old colleagues sent me a message and she was like, you'll never guess what. She was like, HR brought your book in, and the first thing that he said was, oh my God, are we in it?
So, Faye, you very kindly signed this book for me back in June, and I've been diligently going through it and highlighting bits and putting exclamation marks and those things ready to prepare for our chat today. So I've never written a book. How do you start writing a book?
So I followed basically the plan that Lucy had. So she set up something called ABU a long time ago, which was a book of one's own, a book that she wrote, and it tells you how to write your book, and there's a whole writing process. Originally it started with a piece of chipboard that I got, really thin chipboard or something from B&Q, and lots of the coloured cards, and it was... I knew it needed to be 2 or 3 parts, and then you'd have like your chapter heading, you'd have your sort of subtitle headings of what you want to do, and it would be like 4 or 5 sections in each chapter, and then you'd have cards which would be like the content bits. So it started like that, and I just remember I had it all over the floor at first, and then I stuck it to the board and blue tack so you can move things around. And then you get the manuscript and you put that sort of basic bits in there and you literally start writing. And it's, I'm not probably the traditional writer. She's very much, when we did it, set out this time each day. And, you know, that works really well for some authors. But for me, I kind of needed to immerse myself in it in quite big chunks. So I'd do research in the evenings and then weekends write. And I used all my annual leave for 4 years.
To write your book?
Yeah. And in France, so my mum and dad used to have a house in France, so I'd go and lock myself there away for like a week, you know, a couple of weeks, and I'd just literally eat, get up, eat, write, and then literally have a bath, go to bed, just do the same again. You know, walk to the local bakery, get some baguettes and stuff, and just write. But it was, for me, my brain kind of needs to be really immersed in it.
But there was a huge amount of research went into it. You did a survey with hundreds of women.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about the survey that you did?
So, it was really, really detailed survey. So the research is on my website. But basically it got sent out to 605 women, I think it was, or something originally. And 302 got all the way through the whole survey.
Yeah.
And it was really, really detailed with some quite difficult questions. And it was, the reason I asked difficult questions was because I was trying to measure how things had changed. Yeah. But I wanted to know how much. So it was like, if this has happened and you've said yes, did it happen in the last year, 5 years, 10 years or longer? Because I was expecting it to be hopefully improved over time. And what I found sadly is that 30% of the women that I surveyed had been sexually assaulted at work. And of that 30%, 17% of them, it had happened in the last year. So that was 2023.
So what was the criteria for the women that could do the survey?
Anybody was involved. So basically what I did, I've got a marketing friend I used to work with called AU. She helped me do a number of LinkedIn posts, and we literally just said, calling all women in construction, please fill in this questionnaire.
Any role, any level.
Yeah. So it's a mixture of, there's a few tradespeople, lots of sort of surveyors, project managers, business owners, designers, structural engineers, a bit of everything, because construction's got loads and loads of jobs anyway.
Yeah. Okay. And so all this information comes back. What was the hardest truth for you to include?
It was probably that sexual assault statistic that stuck in my brain, because it had happened to me and I really, really was hoping it wouldn't have still been happening.
Yeah.
And I think next to that one was the bullying, because that was like in the high 60%. So just the fact that women are being bullied and harassed, we've got a massive leaky pipeline in the industry. So the ONS stats, we've never averaged over 12.5% for women in construction. And they drop out at the age of about 47, according to our ICS research. And then I've spoken to like 1,000 women in the last 4 years. And the reason is probably the reason that I went into the consulting side, because it just gets exhausting and women are tired. It's not when they've had kids, like you think they might have done, gone, oh, it's too difficult. It's actually later than that. So it's when women are in their 40s, they're just exhausted with the fight. And I was like, why is this happening? But then I started talking to men and I realised actually things aren't great for them either. So, in UK construction, we've got suicide statistics that are 4 times the national average. Mental health for men is terrible. And that's when the book sort of morphed into not just being about women. I realised it needed to really be about men as well, because they're suffering as well. And so I started talking to more men and listening to what they were saying. And that's when I started realising that to change the culture, we need men to help us. But not like the white knight in shining armour. We need them to be allies and to help us and sponsor us. And, we can be allies to men as well, because some of the things that happen to them are not good either.
So the book kind of changed slightly direction as you were researching it and writing it and drafting it.
Yeah.
In your view, what does a win-win construction industry look like?
One where we've got much more diversity and where people are just treated with respect, because at the moment, so many aren't, and it's a real shame, because it's everywhere. It's in everything we do, every house, every pavement we walk on, the water we drink, that engineering that cleans it's been designed by someone. It is literally everywhere. And it's an industry that is quite sick in places, and I feel like culturally it could be so good. There's so many rewarding sort of careers that you can have. You don't have to necessarily be like brain and computer, you can be doing physical stuff, and it's just an industry that's really toxic in places.
There's a great little diagram or like drawing in your book about that leaky pipe. I just want to go back to that a little bit and just talk about it. So you talked about that sort of women in their late 40s. What was the statistics you gave for how many women are leaving?
So in the ONS, it's basically what they do is they measure the number of women in the industry.
So we've got enough women entering the industry?
Well, not enough entering, because otherwise we'd get above. I mean, I think it's about 350,000-ish at the moment. And then what happens is you see the stats go up. So I've been measuring it for a while. And if you look at it on a graph, they'll go up because we've got young women in. and then you'll watch it go like that and it will go down again. And that's the leak. So you can bring all these wonderful young women in. Yeah, come in, we've got great careers for you. And I've done it myself. I've gone into schools and I've gone, yeah, come in, brilliant careers. But then later on down the line, we're losing them. And that's part of the reason, because I'm also on the Global Steering Committee for the Equal Representation for Experts Pledge, which is people like me. You need to have a certain amount of experience to be able to do my job. But we lose them back there.
Well, you're losing them just as they're getting brilliant.
And it's like, you know, so for me, it hits all parts of it. We need to not only bring people in, but we need to also make it safe for them to stay. And that a lot of that is around not only culture and how they're treated, but also doing things differently, particularly in contracting. It can be very much, no, you need to be on site from sort of 7:30, 8 till 6 at night. And you don't. There's contractors, and I've mentioned them in the book, that have tested flexible working on site, and it does work. The programme does not suffer. You don't lose money. So it is totally doable. It just requires people thinking differently.
Can you give an example of a company or culture getting it right?
Waits is a company I worked for, and I never left because of the culture. I left because I was looking for other things, really. But they really, really embrace trying to be flexible. They've outrolled that onto sites. They've got a really good internal culture, and they know that even that isn't perfect, and they work really hard all the time to actually improve it. And he showed me a video when I was writing the book, which I do mention in the book, where they showed that even though they're a really good company with great culture, they still have their own problems. And they showed that to the leadership team, and the leadership team worked really hard afterwards to actually sign up to actually make it better. And I think, you know, no company's going to be perfect. None of us are perfect. We're all human. But if you've always got that intention to improve, that's why the culture stays good in that company. And I think one of the things that Waits has done really well is when there's been people there that haven't had good culture and have impacted staff, they don't stay. And I think that's really important. And I think that's where some other companies perhaps go wrong. They let toxic people stay and then everyone else leaves.
Can you tell me about the power dead rule?
Yeah, so I wrote about this because I really wanted to cover the issues that you get where women don't support other women. And you get that quite a lot when you're in a predominantly male environment and there's very few women. And what will happen is a woman will see another woman that's coming up. She might have had a really, really hard time getting where she is. And there's a balance of power at play. So there's panic. And it's not necessarily something that a woman will realise. It's a bias that we have inherently.
Panic from the more senior woman.
A panic from the senior woman that woman is coming up and maybe might overtake her. So I often refer to it as, you know, someone gets up here and they pull the ladder up because they had it really, really hard to get there. And it's understandable. You look at, like, you know, top people in sort of corporates, you don't have many women at the top. So they did struggle to get there. But the problem is that actually doesn't help other women at all. And it's just not the right thing to do. So I wanted to cover it in the book so that I could talk about the fact that you have an inherent bias that you don't realise you have, and it's fear-based, basically. So for me, I've got other women around me that I want to succeed. So I'm not going to pull the ladder up. And I really wanted other women who maybe had those biases and didn't realise it to read about it and just maybe think to themselves, OK, maybe I've done that. Maybe I felt that fear and thought, oh, it's making me scared that she's coming up. It's OK for other people to do well as well. And actually, I feel like it's our responsibility as women to mentor others so that they don't have to go through the things that we did. And part of that is understanding our own bias so that we can make sure that we don't treat them badly.
Have you had any surprising reactions from men in the industry after reading the book?
Every single one has been positive. And the reason that I wrote it, and it took so flipping long, it's quite conversational. You'll know that from having looked at it. I wanted it to be like I'm talking to you as a person.
Yeah.
And it needed to not turn anybody off. So no matter who it is who reads the book, they'll get something out of it. But every single man who's read it has written a really good review on LinkedIn, for example, and tagged me in.
Yeah.
And usually it's the shock factor first of realising some of these lived experiences, because there's some really difficult experiences that I've put in there, and they are from real women in the industry. But it's the fact that it's like a toolkit that men like, because they read it and they go, OK, this is really bad. I didn't realise this was going on. So now they know the problem. then it's like, well, what do I do? And I've put that in for them as well, because I always say you don't know what you don't know. So now you do know, you need to know what you can do to stop that from happening in future. So for me, it was really important not just to go, oh, here's a load of problems, that, you know, the industry's rubbish. The industry isn't rubbish, it has got loads of problems, but look what we can do to fix it, and look what you personally can do as a man today, from the moment you finish this book. Even before they finished it, some people have started it. Like, they'll go into meetings and they'll be like, oh my God, I didn't realise how many times women get spoken over. And it's only because I read that bit in the book and then I've started to notice stuff. So for me, a lot of it is about raising the awareness and then giving them some really practical things that they can do every day to make a difference. And I feel like that's the ripple that will create the change.
Yeah. Can you give me 3 things that men can do?
Well, I've mentioned the first one. So like one of them in meetings that's always been frustrating, especially when you're the only woman in the meeting, which can often happen in the industry. You do get spoken over, or if you're a quiet woman, you might not get the opportunity to speak. So I always say to men, just stop the meeting for a moment, just go, hold on there, let Faye finish what she was saying, or hold on, Faye's the expert in this, let's hear what she's got to say. So just making that space for someone to have airtime is a big one. Mm-hmm. The other one that I always say to men, particularly when they've read the book, is just go and speak to women and tell them you've read the book and just listen to the feedback, because a big part of being a better ally to anyone is actually just listening to what people are going through. And I think calling people out when there's not women in the room, and this one is a really big one for me, because banter is a big thing that people talk about in construction. Oh, it's only banter. And often there'll be maybe a group of men together, someone will be saying something about a woman. I feel it's your responsibility as a man to go, that is not okay. And what will happen is, a lot of the time when I've interviewed men, they'll be like, well, I know it's not okay and I think it's not okay, but I've not said anything. So the allyship bit is an active role, and it's not just when women are in the room, it's when they're not in the room. You've got to teach others about being respectful, and that means you've got to stand up for what's right, even when we're not in the room.
Okay. And reactions from younger women who see themselves in your story, perhaps?
I've had a lot of very personal messages. Sorry, it's maybe a bit... really personal messages, because they do see themselves in it. Sorry.
Okay. Tissues? We got everything here.
Sorry. I only had one yesterday, that's the thing. It's like...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So people are getting it. So people are reading your book.
Yeah.
They're getting in touch and they're sharing their really personal stories with you.
Yeah, and it's when you've had 4 years of collating information and stories, and some of them are really, really difficult, and many of them didn't make it into the book because it would end up like an encyclopedia. But for me, getting the messages when women have read it and just gone, I feel heard, I feel seen, and I feel like you can make a difference now because it's not hidden anymore. So that's like made such a big impact on me, because I suppose that was part of what I wanted to happen. But it also hurts me because I feel like, why am I still having women that are still having these problems? And that's sort of why I suppose I'm banging the drum, and I'll keep banging the drum about getting people to read it, because I know it will make a difference, because it already is. It's just about getting it out there further.
Yeah. Do you feel proud of yourself?
I do. I feel exhausted, but I do feel proud of myself. It's, yes, it's been a labour of love.
You should be really proud of yourself. When you've shared the statistics about the sexual assault and the bullying. One that I thought was really interesting was 57% felt held back after parenthood.
Yeah.
Can you talk me through that one a bit more?
So a lot of the women that are mothers that I spoke to, they felt like when they come back to work, they're not supported properly. And I mean, you have to remember, when women have had a child, they're then dealing with often drop off to nursery and school. Mum guilt is a big one that I've spoken to a number of women about, and that is a real genuine concern. and they're still trying to fight with their career. But then they've got people who are like, oh, you had 2 years off, or you had a year off. And it's not a year off having a baby. You're creating a human to keep us all going at the end of the day. You need to like be completely respectful of these women. And then they come back to work and maybe they're chucked straight back in the deep end. They haven't been eased back in when they've had that time away. Some contractors and consultants aren't good enough at maybe doing the keeping in touch stuff when people are off, so that they don't feel like they've lost out on something.
Yeah.
And I think that sort of combination is really difficult for women. There's some companies that are doing really good things to try and make sure that they don't feel like that. But I love it when I read about a company who's still giving a woman a promotion when she's on maternity leave, for example, because it's like, yes, you know, they get it. It shouldn't be just because you've gone away and had a child that when you come back to work, you somehow are less. If anything, they're more, because they're now dealing with more. They can, especially when you've got toddlers and young kids, my God, women can be incredible when they're trying to organise all that stuff. So, you know, we can use that really well in the industry, but there seems to still be some parts of the industry that are very, very behind in that thinking. Mothers are great. Do meetings between 10 and blooming 2:30. Don't mess with school time and you'll get so much out of them. They'll go home, pick the kids up, and then they'll crack on working again. It's just thinking differently.
How did you create a safe and respectful space for women to share their experiences, especially those who've carried, you know, the weight of harassment or exclusion or bullying for years?
I don't even know. I think it's just me. I think just because I'd probably opened the door for people to talk. The ones that did the survey, some of them, as they were doing it, were messaging me just saying, I don't actually know if I can finish this. So I was trying to sort of encourage them to keep going. There were some that were like, I can't do it. So I'd speak to them myself. And I think it's just listening. That's really all it takes. And maybe knowing that I was doing it for the right reasons, because I think no one's really done this before, and it has been a bit of a weird one for the industry, because we've spoken about problems, but no one's actually gone, bang, here's some really bad experiences. This is what's actually happening. Now let's sort it out.
Yeah. Is there one story that's really stayed with you?
I think the woman that had the project manager go back to her hotel room and try and assault her, I think that was, yeah, and her company thought it would be okay to, you know, get him to give her a bunch of flowers on site. Didn't move him. He was allowed to stay on that site. She felt completely unsafe, and it was all because he was going to get the job done. And that sort of attitude is the one that many women have faced.
The idea that we need to fix the culture, not the women, really stood out to me. What does that mean for leaders and organisations trying to shift things?
I mean, a lot of the time with women in the industry, in all industry, because I've spoken to a few people in other sectors who've had the same, is women often get sent on leadership courses. And don't get me wrong, I've had some myself, they can be really good. But what they're doing is they're trying to arm you with tools to deal with toxic culture so it doesn't impact you as much. My attitude is women don't need fixing. There's nothing wrong with women. Yes, they are all different. Some are more emotional, some are empathic, some might not be as confident. And yes, leadership courses are great. But if you take them and put them on a brilliant course and they have a great time on that course and then dump them straight back into a really shit culture, they're not going to have any change, because it's the culture that actually is toxic. So you could be like really, I've had it myself. I did one at Henley. I was really excited when I got back. I was like, yay, I've done this course. It was a residential one, did it for a week. But then you go straight back to work and you're still dealing with bullying and harassment and the same sort of bad behaviours. So for me, it's around, let's make the culture safer for everyone. And then, yes, the courses will be great and they'll get all of those skills, but they can come back and use them in different ways. They won't have to be taught how to deal with, you know, toxic banter and bullying. They can be taught actually proper leadership skills where they can actually be empathic. You know, emotional intelligence, I think, is one thing that we've not traditionally had a lot of in construction, and it's something that I think it really needs. And I think when you see more women in the industry, men talk more, and I think it will help with mental health as well, because you need that softer side. There's so much of the toxic sort of masculinity and patriarchy stuff that's chucked around at the moment. But actually, in construction particularly, it's put up, man up, shut up. And that's part of the reason that we've got the mental health problems we have. And then men are told not to talk, aren't they? You know, don't cry, don't show weakness. But actually, I think when I've worked with men, and particularly on sites, you talk more and you can still have banter. It doesn't mean you're not going to have banter having more women, and it doesn't mean women are going to take men's jobs at all, but it does mean that actually you start to have a slightly softer side to everybody, and I think there's more listening and more talking that naturally comes about.
We touched briefly on the male suicide rates in construction. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Well, they're obviously really, really high, and that was one of the things that really changed the book into how everyone can win. You know, there's a lot of people doing really, really good work trying to help men and their mental health in construction, but we have some really poor behaviours. So a lot of the industry is made up of SMEs, so sort of small and medium enterprises. So you can have really, really great big contractors doing really good things, but because it's a very fragmented industry, the cultures that are good in the big boys doesn't necessarily work its way down the supply chain. And because you can have 30 or 40, 50 different subcontractors working on a job, they have all got different cultures, they've all got different behaviours. So for me, the only way that we're going to improve mental health is to actually make them come along for the ride as well. And I feel like the big contractors do have a big part to play in this. And part of that is we do toolbox talks and inductions, and we talk about health and safety, but I think mental health and safety has to come into it in a much bigger way in the industry. And I think the only way that mental health for men will improve is by doing that. You have to look at small and medium enterprises, small companies that you can go right down to your brickie with a trowel. They can't afford to take a day off to do a course.
No.
So I feel like the industry as a whole needs to actually make sure that they're training people and offering them the services that they need to actually be healthy. And we need to really call out bad behaviour. So I know I've done a bit of work with the Considerate Constructors scheme recently. I spoke on their partner day, and I want to work with them some more, because I feel like we need to measure the culture on site, and then when it's bad, we need to work to actually improve it. But you need anonymous reporting, because people aren't necessarily just going to come out and go, oh yeah, this site's really awful, you know, we get treated terribly. But also treating the supply chain right, paying them on time. The pressure in construction is massive with programs and commercials. So I think more realistic clients, more realistic contractors saying to clients, look, this is actually impossible. You know, people will take money and jobs on just to get turnover. That actually isn't helping the industry at all.
Yeah, completely agree. What are some of the most common but subtle ways that organisations will put the burden on women to adapt?
Well, probably a bit like I had, where you're sort of, you know, just having to just try and fit in. And I think just not allowing that flexibility can be really difficult for women, and not just for women. I mean, anyone with caring responsibilities, you know, we've got an ageing society. A lot of people are looking after aged parents and family and friends. I think we just generally need to make the industry a bit kinder.
You talked about allyship and, you know, how that looks for you. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of allyship, and I talk about this with Lee Chambers, we were talking about it yesterday, is the awareness is the first part for anyone in allyship, but I think also understanding it's an active role. I can't remember them all, they're in the book, but there's 7 different types of allyship that I reference, and they're all different depending on the sort of person you are. But every single one is an active role, whether that's being someone who sponsors a woman behind the scenes, whether it's someone who's mentoring and sponsoring her in front of people, interrupting people in a meeting, you know, shouting about her to clients, saying how great she is. There's so many different things you can do, but it's always an active role. And I think a lot of people have never understood it. They've somehow correlated it to maybe, you know, like wartime. You talk about allies in wartime. It's not about that. It's actually about doing the right thing. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that came out for me when I spoke to all the people while doing the research. Really, it's a human business, construction, and it really is about just doing the right thing for people.
Have you seen an example that's really worked?
What, of allyship? I've seen lots of examples. I think there's some really great people who do brilliant things. Like I say, some of the best ones are people that do things when women aren't in the room. And I'll reference Fraser Bishop on this one, and he's not in construction, he's outside the sector, but he's sort of lived and breathed the book with me for the last 4 years. He was at a course recently, and he works in security, and the guy was making references to women's nipples, and he sort of came home and he was like, oh, I'm really not happy about that. I don't know what to do. And I was like, well, you do know what to do, because we've spoken about this a lot. So he went in the next day and he told the trainer that he wasn't happy about the derogatory language that had been used. And the trainer had never been pulled up on it. And he went away and thought about it. He even took a book, gave it to the trainer. And that trainer, it must be about a month ago now, sent him a really lovely email saying that it had had a really big impact on him. No one had ever done that before. And actually it's made him rethink how he actually does things in future. So for me, that's one really good example of allyship. It's not always when women are in the room, but it makes a massive difference. And that will change that trainer now for good. And I think that's what it's about. It's a small step that might feel a bit uncomfortable in the moment, but that's actually going to make a difference now for the rest of that man's career when he's training people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, those men that were in that room, how many were uncomfortable with the language that was being used? Probably all of them. But no one really knew what to do or what to say. So allyship is an active role, and it is uncomfortable. You will make mistakes, and women know that you're going to make mistakes, and that's fine as long as it's done with the right intention.
For those listening, men and women who are in a position to hire, mentor or shape culture, what's the first step you should take tomorrow to start fixing the system?
Listen. Find out what the problems are first, because that's what I spent 4 years doing.
Yeah.
It's really listening to what the issues are. I think there's a lot of talk about what the issues are, but it's only when you actually listen to people that you can really work out exactly where they come, and what happens is you get themes then. So, you know, we can all talk about bullying and harassment, but when you start listening to where it happens, how it happens, what sort of bullying it is, whether it's, you know, derogatory language, whether it is physical, you get real themes come through, and then you can actually tackle what's going on.
Looking back at your 30 years in the industry, what's the achievement or moment that still makes you proudest?
Probably, my first one was probably getting my degree. Because I bullied my way into university because I hadn't finished my A-levels. I did an HNC bridge course, and I was like, well, I just want to get on the degree. I don't want to do the HNC itself. And I went and interviewed at Westminster University. I think it was a guy called Tony Gilby was there running it at the time. And I was like, you've got people in here, they've done like an art A-level and a history A-level. They know nothing about construction. I've been doing this since I was a kid with my dad taking me out on site and stuff. I was like, and I'm working in the industry. I was like, you know, why can I not just do the 5-year part-time degree? And he went, well, okay, if you can pass the first year, I'll let you stay. So I did that, and obviously I passed it. And I just got real pleasure in that, because I wasn't working at the original company, but I know Gary Mumford, who's my like original really cool manager and mentor. He always had great pleasure telling that first manager that I made the sarcastic comment about golf, that I'd got my degree and then I got this and then I got that. So yeah, that was probably my first one, followed by getting chartered, I think, with
What was it that drove you to want to get that degree?
I know it's bad to swear, but I really was like, no, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it properly, and I'm going to prove you all wrong.
Yeah, love that. What do you wish the next generation of women entering construction knew from day one?
It's okay to be you.
Was there a piece of advice you wish you had taken earlier?
Yeah, not staying in a job too long when you know it's toxic, because I have done that, and I think you don't necessarily it gets very hard, I think, as you get older to move. Change gets more difficult. So when I was younger, I would move very, very quickly. I'd be like, this is rubbish. No, not putting up with it.
Yeah.
I think as I've got older, if I'm honest, I've become a bit more like a cat. Change is not something that is easy. And I stayed when I shouldn't have done. So yeah, don't stay in a toxic workplace, because there's always somewhere better.
Would you say you're ambitious?
Yeah.
What does ambition look like to you now?
I think for me, it's always just trying to do better. But I think my ambition is slightly different now, because it's not just doing better in my career, it's sort of doing better for everybody as well.
Yeah.
So I've sort of got like a 2 sort of pronged ambition now.
What are you a beginner at right now?
Well, I don't know. I suppose trying to be better at trying to get the word out. I'm not great at social media, so I'm trying to learn that stuff.
I think you're pretty good.
I'm good on LinkedIn, but I'm really rubbish at everything else. So that's my next mission, try and get better at things like YouTube. I've been persuaded I should do Substack. And yeah, just trying to get better at that sort of stuff, because it's not something I've traditionally embraced, but I've sort of realised that if I'm going to get the message out, I really do need to do that more.
Have you been surprised by the reach of the book?
Yeah, I have. I think a lot of that has been helped by the men that have reviewed it, because their reviews actually go so far because they go out and talk about it as well. So like the women, it's almost like, oh God, we knew this was happening, you know. And yeah, fantastic, but we need men to read it. Whereas when the men read it, they're like, oh my God, this is actually life-changing.
Yeah.
I want to actually make a difference.
Yeah.
And then that's how the difference will happen. That's for me what the reach is about. It's about reaching the men. And I think that's why when I do the audio book, I really hope it will go out to tradespeople as well, because they won't have time necessarily to read a book because they're driving in and out of work and they work long hours. But I hope that they'll listen to it, and I hope that they'll know that I care about them and I want it better for them as well.
How many copies of the book have you sold?
Nearly 1,000.
Wait, that's amazing.
Yeah, relief, because the pallet that arrived on my front drive was a bit of a shock. Yeah, so it's been a painful process, but yeah, I needed to try and sell as many as possible, because I took a loan out to publish because I wanted to do it properly.
Amazing.
So yeah, I mean, it is on Kindle. It will be on Audible soon because I'm recording that. You know, and Amazon do it as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you get one from me, at least you know it's come from me personally and it's been printed by the original publisher.
Yeah, amazing. So, as you know, the podcast is called Places She Shapes. I've got 3 shaping moments questions for you. So the first one, places. You're in a room with everyone you've ever met, dead or alive, excluding your immediate family. Who would you look for first?
My grandma.
Why is that?
I lost her when I was 13 and she was really, really special to me. Yeah, I just adored her. And yeah, she would probably be the person I'd look for first.
Oh. The she question. Who's the woman you turn to for advice and why?
Do you know what? It was one for a very long time, but over this book writing process, I've actually got a few now.
That's amazing.
And I never had that before. So advice-wise, I don't necessarily turn to one. It used to be my best friend, but I think now I've got a really good collection of women around me and I feel really blessed for that.
So different, somebody different for
depending on what is going on in my mind, I've got different women that I can go to now, which I'd never had before.
And shapes, how would you shape your ideal day?
Oh, probably get up and do a workout because that kind of wakes me up. Followed by a really, really strong, lovely coffee because I'm quite into Peruvian coffee at the moment. It's really nice, Machu Picchu coffee, tastes lovely. And then if it was the ideal day, on a beach by the sea, so I could just sort of lounge around and swim when I wanted, and that's like my happy place, being by the sea.
Amazing, sounds really good. Thank you, Faye, so much. It was great.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to the Places She Shapes podcast here on YouTube and leave a like on the video if you've enjoyed it.
Okay, let's take it from the top.